Now let's try to examine this argument. It's stated here, after my son had his vaccine, he developed autism. Therefore, the vaccine caused autism. Ibig sabihin, ang sinasabi dito sa argument na to, yung bakuna raw, after the child had this vaccine, ito, yung vaccine caused autism. Is there something wrong with this argument? Now, let's check further in this lecture kung may mali. Now, we've discussed arguments before during the midterm. We have deductive argument, inductive arguments. We have discussed the difference between material and then formal logic. Those kind of arguments can fall under formal fallacies. Again, when we say formal fallacies, this pertains to those kinds of arguments, deductive, inductive. Now, dito sa lecture na to, we're going to discuss informal fallacies. Okay, again, yung una po natin diniscuss is all about formal fallacies. Ito yung pagkakaugnay-ugnay ng mga premises with the conclusion. In this lecture, again, we're just going to discuss informal fallacies. What are fallacies? Now, the word fallacy is derived from the Latin word fallere, which means to deceive. So, we've been discussing about ideas and terms. We've been discussing these are the tools that we use as we try to understand better the world. So, we have perception, we have sensible ideas, and then essential ideas. We have primary qualities tsaka secondary qualities na minention natin from our previous slides. Dito naman, it's the applicability of those discussion. So, fallacy, again, ang word na fallacy was derived from the Latin word fallere, which means to intentionally deceive. Okay, if I'm the speaker, I perceive the world as it is, like this. And then, because I have my own idea, I try to represent what I perceived in my senses through my words. So, I can easily manipulate those representations in my ideas through perceptions sa pamamagitan ng aking pananalita. By using these terms, by using suppositions, by using informal fallacies. So with this, I try, because of using such fallacies, if you are not a careful listener, you might have a different view about reality. That's the objective of detecting fallacy at its early phase. So what are fallacies? These are false argument that has the appearance of the truth. The reason why it has the appearance of the truth, because the main aim of a fallacy is to deceive the truth from the listener, from the audience. Now, it has two sides. May dalawang sides ang fallacy. Yung sophism tsaka paralogism. Now, what's the difference between sophism and then paralogism? Pag sinabi nating sophism, the intention of the argument is to deceive and lure the audience from the reality, from the truth. Okay, intention mo manin lang, that's sophism. By using fallacious argument. Next is paralogism. Ang paralogism naman, you don't have any idea that what you're saying, the contents of your argument has a fallacy. So yun yung ibig sabihin ng paralogism. There's the ignorance on correct reasoning is not detected because simply you are ignorant about your mistake. That's paralogism. Okay, ulitin ko. When you say sophism, the aim of sophism is to deceive. It's your intention to deceive your audience. Whereas for paralogism, you are not aware that you're committing mistake and fallacy in your argument simply because you are ignorant about the rules of rules of the construction of your statement. Okay, yun yung pinagkaiba about paralogism and then sophism. Let's check this slide. Is this an example of sophism or paralogism? Gusto ni Enrile, happy ka. According to Rizal, to be happy does not mean to indulge in foolishness. Sophism, again, intention to deceive. Paralogism, ibig sabihin you're not aware of your ignorance. You're not aware that there's a mistake in the construction of your argument. You're not aware that there's a fallacy in your argument. Again, ito yung ad ni Enrile nung tatakbo siya again for Senate. Gusto ni Enrile na happy yung mga voters. Is this a kind of sophism or paralogism? Next, we have top 10 most common superstitions. Is this an example of sophism or paralogism? Kunin lang natin siguro mga dalawa. Sige. Let's just try to state all of them. Not walking under a ladder. Breaking a mirror can cause bad luck. Touching wood for luck. Not opening umbrellas indoors. Crossing fingers for luck. 4-leaf clover being good luck. Not putting new shoes on the table. Black cat being good luck. Picking up penny for good luck. And then number 13 being a bad luck number. So again, is this an example of sophism or paralogism? Next, this one. Losing your pen would imply that you will not have any pen. If you don't have any pen, it would imply that you won't be able to take your notes. Kung hindi ka makapag-notes, hindi ka makapag-aral. Kung hindi ka makapag-aral, babagsak ka. Kung babagsak ka, hindi mo makukuha yung diploma mo. Kung hindi mo makuha yung diploma mo, wala kang trabaho. Kung wala kang trabaho, wala kang pera. Kung wala kang pera, wala kang pagkain. Kung wala kang pagkain, papayat ka. Kung papayat ka, papangit ka. Kung papangit ka, hindi ka magkakaroon ng love life. Kung mawawalan ka ng love life, hindi ka magkakaroon ng pagkakataon maikasal. Kung hindi ka maikakasal, hindi ka magkakaroon ng anak. Kung hindi ka magkakaroon ng anak, magiging mag-isa ka. Kung magiging mag-isa ka, magkakaroon ka ng depression. Kung magkakaroon ka ng depression, magkakasakit ka. Kung magkakasakit ka, mamamatay ka. Sa madaling salita, ang conclusion in this slide is wag mong iwawala ang iyong pen. Kasi kung iwawala mo yan, mamamatay ka. Now, is this an example of sophism or paralogism? Now, these are example of fallacies. Now, ang question is this an example of sophism or paralogism? Again, let's discuss the difference between formal and then informal fallacies. As mentioned a while ago, we've been discussing valid and invalid arguments, deductive and then inductive arguments, material and then formal logic. Those are example of formal fallacies. A logical error in a deductive argument that occurs in the form or structure of an argument. So yung dinidiscuss natin during midterm is all about formal fallacy. Now, in the end term, we're going to discuss informal fallacy. When we say informal fallacy, it's a mistake in reasoning that occurs in ordinary language. So, ibig sabihin, yung i-discuss natin dito are ordinary language. Not necessarily na merong composition of premises. Not necessarily that I'm going to show you syllogism. Ang ipapakita lang natin dito are ordinary language used by ordinary people, and then we have to check and then we have to examine if they are committing an informal fallacy, including mistakes due to relevance, unwarranted assumption, and then ambiguity or diversion. So that's the difference between informal and formal fallacy. Again, ito yung illustration on the difference between informal and then formal fallacies. Ito yung pag-aaralan natin. We might be seeing a certain premise lang, a certain premise ulit, and another certain premise. Not necessarily syllogism, kasi if we're going to discuss syllogism, we're talking about formal fallacies. Ito na yung deductive, inductive, material, formal, logic na diniscuss natin during the midterm. Now, during the end term, ito lang i-discuss natin, informal fallacies. Punta tayo ngayon sa informal fallacies. We're going to discuss 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 classifications of informal fallacies. Pero let's just try to discuss this first. Relevance, informal fallacy or fallacy of relevance. Kasi ang fallacy of relevance has multiple sub-classification. When we say multiple sub-classification, ganito karami yan. Yan. Under fallacy of relevance, we have 9 sub-classification of fallacy of relevance. Now, what's how do we describe the fallacy of relevance? Ang ibig sabihin lang ng fallacy of relevance, irrelevant yung mga premises dun sa conclusion, or pwede ring irrelevant yung premise, succeeding predicates with the subject being examined. So the premises are relevant psychologically, so the conclusion may seem to follow from the premises even though it does not follow logically. So relevant, paano mo ba masasabi ang relevant mo? Now if you are, let's say for instance, you're the church, okay, you must not be confined only on the limits of your own territory, kasi you're preaching about the word of God. So you have to go outside and examine the current situation of your followers, of the people of God. Hindi yung preach ng salita ng Diyos pero hindi mo nakikita yung tunay na sitwasyon na nangyayari sa labas ng simbahan nyo. So in order for you to be relevant, dapat hindi ka lang relevant inside, but you should also be relevant outside your own comfort zone. That's the meaning of relevance. Now under the fallacy of relevance, we're going to see that there are premises na napaka-irrelevant dun sa conclusion mismo. Okay, yun yung ibig sabihin ng fallacy of relevance. Now, punta tayo sa first fallacy of relevance. Now, let's just try to identify and familiarize ourselves with these different names. Accident, fallacy of accident. Ad hominem is a Latin word which means andun yung homo. Pinakamalapit na word that we can associate with the word hominem is man. So this second fallacy is simply an attack on man, or a fallacy about man. We have populum, again this is a Latin word which pertains to the population or to the public. And then we have misericordiam. Misericordiam dito is a fallacy which pertains to misery or mercy or sorrow. Baculum, again sa Latin word, kunin lang natin dito yung pinaka to easily remember this one, kunin natin dito yung Tagalog word na bakal. So when you say bakal, this is a fallacy which pertains to force, puwersa. Okay, that's letter F. And then we have strawman. Ang strawman naman is all about exaggeration. Ignoratio elenchi is missed evidence. Ignoratio, ibig sabihin you are introducing a conclusion na hindi naman dapat relevant dun sa binigay mong premise. So ibig sabihin naglaktaw ka kaagad na ito dapat yung necessary conclusion. Kasi the reason why it was called ignorant kasi you haven't checked the other possible conclusion for your premise. You already jumped to a specific conclusion without checking other possible conclusion. That's ignoratio elenchi. Now for red herring is diversion to other topics. Kasi may pinag-uusapan tayong topic about a certain problem, pero instead of maintaining or sticking with the problem being discussed, ang ginagawa natin under red herring is to divert and go to another topic. Ang red herring po kasi is used by hunters to dogs. Ginagamit to ng mga hunters na pinapaamoy sa mga aso para ma-divert nila yung attention nila. So that's the reason why this fallacy got its name. Appeal to advantage, nandun na yung sagot. I'm using means. I'm using instruments to lure the audience para mag-iba yung decision mo. Although it may appear that it might be advantageous for the audience. Dalawang makakaranas ng advantage dito. The one who introduce the problem, let's say the subject, and then yung other object. Okay, dalawa silang makakuha ng advantage. Pero makakuha ng advantage tong subject. Itong object naman, walang ibang choice kundi kunin yung advantage from the subject. So, ibig sabihin, may makukuhang advantage yung subject from the object. May makukuha ring advantage yung object from the subject, pero the object doesn't have any choice. Initially, ayaw ng object, pero since the subject introduce an advantage to the object doesn't have any choice but to accept the advantage point, the vantage point being introduced by the subject. Okay, that's the overview of the fallacy of relevance. Punta tayo sa fallacy of accident. Sa fallacy of accident, ang keyword that we need to remember here is the rule. So again, ang fallacy po is your intention to deceive. Accident, para mas maintindihan natin to, the reason why people are experiencing accident, let's say for instance sa kalsada, it's because they don't follow the rule. Okay? Halimbawa, may nasagasaan na bata sa kalsada kasi hindi niya alam kung ano ang batas tungkol sa hindi sa pagtawid sa kalsada. Again, ang keyword for fallacy of accident is we're talking about a rule. Now, this general rule which appears to be generally correct for everyone is being misapplied to a specific case. Okay, yung rule na to, at first glance, ang rule na ginagamit dito sa fallacy na to is actually correct. Pag sinabi natin correct, sa unang tingin tama naman talaga siya. Pero dahil nga sa tama siya, maganda yung intention niya, ini-exploit siya ng user to be misapplied to a specific case para masabi nung audience, ng listener, na tama pala yung pagkakagamit ng rule. Okay? That's the fallacy of accident. Example. We have a general rule about life, which is this one, sharing is caring. Tinuturo natin yan sa mga bata at an early age for them to realize that sharing is actually good. Now, this becomes a fallacy if the user or the one who deceives tries to exploit its good intention. Now, general rule, generosity is good. So, magandang intention ng sharing is caring. But, again, it becomes fallacious if you try to misapply. Mini-misapply mo yung magandang hangarin ng general rule. You misapply sharing is caring to where? To the exam. Okay? Sharing is caring. So kung sasabihin for example ng batang to, sharing is caring. Now, if you actually care, you should share your answers to me because sharing is caring. No way, I'm not gonna be your accomplice in a felony. Asan yung fallacy dito? Ang fallacy dito is the usage of this boy. Ginamit ng batang to yung general rule na sharing is caring. Now, if you actually care for others, you should share your answers with me because sharing is caring. This is a fallacy on accident because you misapplied the rule about sharing to a specific case. Okay, may misapplication of case. Ito yung specific case. Anong case natin dito? Yung case natin dito was the exam. Right? This is the fallacy on accident. Again, ang keyword natin for fallacy of accident is misapplication of rules. Accident, meron tayong ang dahilan kung bakit na-aksidente ang mga tao kasi hindi sumusunod sa batas. Now, under fallacy of accident, rules are misapplied on a specific case. So, definition for accident is what is true as a general rule or policy. Ito yung sharing is caring is also assumed true in some special cases. Right? Another example is this one. One has to tell the truth always. Thus, if a murderer confessed his crime to a priest, it is but proper to the priest to reveal the truth to the authority. Now, this is a fallacy because priests are covered with the principle of confidentiality. When we say confidentiality, the reason why people are had this faith with priests to confess their sins to them is because priests follow the principle of confidentiality. When we say confidentiality, ito yung sinumpaan nila na hindi nila pwedeng i-reveal ang kahit anong information na sasabihin sa kanila sa confession because it's part of their tawag dito, parang obligation. It's part of their obligation na kailangan part of their job for people not to lose their faith and trust to them. It's necessary for the priest to keep the information no matter kung kung gaano ka-importante yon. Now, if you're going to exploit that opportunity, one has to tell the truth always. Kung gagamitan ko yan ng misapplied rule, I'm committing a fallacy. Okay? So that's the fallacy of accident. Next is argumentum ad hominem. Now, under argumentum ad hominem, it has three sub categories. Ad hominem is a Latin word. So, ad hominem, homonem means man. So, it's an argument that uses an attack against man. May tatlong subclassification. It can be abusive, it can be circumstantial, at it can be tokoke. You're familiar with this person. Ganun din yung ginawa niya. Yung ginawa ng person na to with the public, is that an example of abusive, circumstantial, or tokoke? So let's examine the difference dito sa mga tatlong types of argumentum ad hominem. First is abusive. When we say abusive, it suggests an attack against man. So instead of attacking the argument, instead of attacking the argument, the speaker attacks the person and not the argument. Okay? So it consists in attacking the person instead of proving or disproving the point at issue. So, what do you mean by this? If I'm discussing something, if I'm discussing a specific problem with a certain audience or with a certain person who listens to my argument, instead of attacking the problem, ang inaatake ko ngayon yung pagkatao niya. So this is ad hominem. Kaya siya abusive. Kasi inaabuso ko na yung yung argumentation. Inaabuso ko na this is character assassination. So example, don't believe him, he's gay. Asan yung character assassination dito? Ito yung yung pagiging gay nung kadebate ko. Are you going to agree with that dirty pig is saying? So ang ginamit ko dito is dirty pig.